anyways, let's go back to the interview with the Celestine NEMA, and we talk about a little bit about our experience as Africans as well. Where do we go from here? And yeah, so part two of our interview.
All right, Nema, thank you and welcome back. So yeah, we were talking about how our community is doing during COVID, and obviously we know business has to go on as well.
Yeah.
So as far as the business, as far as the activities that you're doing, what has been the difficult logistically for you to set up, whether it's these virtual events or even the upcoming activities that you're planning to do? What has been the most difficult part for you as a leader in the community?
I think the most difficult part for me has been, well, one, this is definitely a new space. I had never had to hold a virtual event before. I know obviously like people had been doing this over the years and, you know, like, but this is something that I'd never actually had to do. And like I said, our community really relies on the idea of like connection and being in one space. And so I think what was very difficult was trying to figure out how to engage our community, especially like, you know, with everything that was going on, there's been a lot of things that are happening virtually. So the space is already quite, what's the word I'm looking for? There's just too much going on, you know? And so even when you're trying to get like the idea of trying to get like our audience to like pay attention to what we're trying to do virtually, like they are being bombarded with everything happening virtually now, you know?
Yeah, saturated with
yeah, saturated is the word I was looking for. So things are quite saturated, and I think it was quite difficult for us to figure out how we would engage our sort of like our community and our members, mostly because you know, like I said, things are saturated and they've been bombarded, especially with everything that happened with, you know, with Black Lives Matter over the summer. You know, there was a lot of events that were going on. There was a lot of great things that came out of our community. But unfortunately, it was quite saturating. You know, a lot of people eventually were like, you know what, I've had enough of all the Zoom calls. I'm on Zoom calls when I'm at work. I'm on Zoom calls for class. And now I have to be on Zoom calls even for social events.
Yeah.
And so it was a little difficult. It was a little difficult to get people engaged. And I know this because even with the event that we did, getting like people to sign up to come to the event was quite difficult. Like we literally had to message people like one by one, like, hey, remember this is happening, please come through. And that's not something that we'd ever needed to do, because a lot of times, you know, it was always word of mouth. Oh, you know, Youth of East Africa is doing this event on this day, and you know, just go tell all your friends. And that's all we ever had to do, really. But all of a sudden, we really needed to put in more effort to try and grab their attention and be like, hey, this is something that we're doing that we think will be great. Now, when we did the event, it was absolutely fantastic. Everybody who came absolutely loved it. And, you know, and they realized that that's something that they were missing in their lives in that moment. But it was a struggle to get them to that space, you know, because things are just a little...
they don't know what to expect. And
one, they don't know what to expect. It's completely different from what they've ever expected from us as an organization, because normally when people come to us, they kind of have an idea of what's going to happen, because we've been around for about 5 years now. We've done a lot of events in these past 5 years, and our members are very loyal members. So like, you know, we tend to have the same people coming through and bringing in their friends, their other family members, and you know, we're like a big family. And so all of a sudden people are just like, what exactly are you guys going to be doing? You know, like, I don't understand how this is going to work in terms of like thinking of how things used to work before. So, you know, those would be the challenges I would say. So the first challenge would be the fact that, you know, everything that's happening in the virtual space is quite saturated. And so people just feel like they're being bombarded with too much information right now. And the other thing is people just not knowing exactly what to expect of a virtual event. So I found that to be... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I wanted to let you finish your thought.
Oh, no. I think I was just repeating myself, so please continue.
Okay. So my question then is, obviously you're planning to do more of these events. We don't know when COVID is going to end. What is that? So I guess the thing you've learned is you've got to talk to, because do they still have this kind of level of fatigue when it comes to to virtual events? And if so, do you then have to do what you did, which is you got to reach out to everybody because that's what you have to do? Because I feel like for me also that's been the challenge, because we were running a leadership training during the whole COVID of at least the last 6 months. and we really had to reach out to every individual, which I didn't mind. But at some point, you get to a point where you're like, you know what? I think this virtual thing is really getting to people. So for the future events, what are you going to do differently to make it easy for you, but also to maintain and maybe increase the audience that you need?
I think the one thing that is working for us at the moment is the fact that our first virtual event was very successful, and the people who attended absolutely loved it and really wished their friends were there with them. And so what I'm hoping for is the idea of, again, like, you know, just word of mouth being like, hey, you know what, we're doing this event again. And so our focus right now is getting those people who came to the first event to come and bring more people with them. Because they are already, at least we've already convinced them that this was something that was great, you know, because they stayed for the entire event and even a longer period of time. Like, I think the event was supposed to go from, I believe, from 8 to 10, and we were on till like almost midnight. Like, people just were on. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. You know, like, it was a great way to sort of just like get the community back up. Like, people were like, you know, we're dancing, vibing to the music or whatever it is we were doing. It was really nice. And so I think what we're going to do is focus on trying to get those people to come back, and then just for them to bring more people with them, because it was quite difficult having to message, like, you know, tons of people. Like, yes, you know, luckily I have a very wonderful team, and our team was able to, like, you know, reach out to as many people as we could, and that's why we're able to get the people that we got. But, you know, it's time consuming. It's time consuming having a message. Yeah, like back and
absolutely, forth. Especially when you have you know, we do this, a lot of this is voluntary time. You put it in, fitting that into your voluntary time. So being able to reach out to everybody, and then you have your regular job, it's really tough. And I commend you. I commend anybody who is doing this for sure, because I know how hard it is to do.
Thank you. And yes, and shout out to the YA team. Those guys are fantastic. They're like my rock.
Absolutely. I look forward. I'm looking forward. So this is where the COVID thing pisses me off too, because I'm looking forward. Like, the event that I joined, that I was a part of, that was amazing. I feel like that was like one of the very first few events that introduced me back into the community. And I definitely miss that. I miss that experience. You guys do a lot of incredible events. So you know, even the social media one. I think what we want to do is, even, I guess one of the reasons why we have this platform was to let other people know, right? Like, people in the East African community, they might know this event, but how about the people in the West, people in the South? Like, we feel like we need to connect up the bridges that exist within the African community, which leads me to my next question, by the way. And this is maybe more serious. You can choose to answer or not, but where do you think we go as a community, as an Africanadian community? How do you, when you look at where we are now, regardless of COVID or not, where do you think we go? Are we in the right direction? Or, like, what are we doing wrong? What should we do to change that? I know it's a lot of things in one question, but I know you're involved in the community, so I'm sure you think about these things as much as I do.
Yes, I think about this day in, day out. I think, you know what, I think we are moving in the right direction, but slowly. That's what I think. I think there's a lot more that could be done. And I think a lot more of us could be involved in mobilizing our community, in making sure that we are represented in spaces that we're not represented, in making sure that, like, you know, that people pay attention, and that people know that there are African Canadians who are actually around, and that they were doing a lot of great, wonderful things. I think the only other thing that I would say is, I do think that you know, the African Canadian community, at least, like, you know, or people of African descent who live in Canada, a lot of us, it's a lot easier for us to just focus on ourselves and like our immediate families and our immediate friends, rather than look at us as a whole and think, you know, like, as a whole, where are we trying to move? What are the spaces that we should be occupying that we're not occupying? You know, those are conversations that I don't see a lot of us having. And I would love for that to be the case. I would love for young people of African descent who live in Canada to you know, to rise up and say, okay, you know what? Yes, maybe our parents were not a part of this particular like group, but we are going to be the ones who join in and stand up for it. I would love to see us in sports. I want to see us like represented in things like arts and culture and sports, and, you know, because we are very good at working very hard and, like, you know, anything that's very professional. But I think in terms of like other social aspects of living in Canada, we're very removed from them. And
So
so
let me challenge you, Nema. Let me challenge you. I want to see Celestine NEMA as either local MP or federal MP in the next. I don't know. I'm giving you 10 years because for me that's even where I'm looking. I'm looking at your generation actually taking on that part of our, you know, like I feel like we're in these areas in sports and like those are like arts, we're good at that. We are on top of the chain as maybe not African Canadian in general, but as Black people we are there, but we're not in the places where decisions are made. And honestly, I feel like, yeah, I like, to me, if you guys, someone like you who has the background, you have education, you're in the community, you're already doing community organizing, why not? For me, if I meet someone like you 5 years from now and I have the ability to promote you, whether it's on a media platform or anything, that's what I'm looking for. So what do you think?
No, I do agree. I completely agree. I think we definitely need political representation. But that is something that is coming up. I think in the past few years, there's definitely a lot more Africans, I would say, or people who were born like, you know, on the continent or like off the continent that have like, you know, are taking more and more of these spaces. Not as many as we would like, but, you know, more and more of us are coming up and more of us are getting involved in politics and more of us are, you know, paying attention to exactly what is happening in Canada as Canadians. But I think what the problem is, though, is that the people who focus on it, and then the rest of the community is left behind. In the sense that, you know what, the people who are focused on this politics, yes, they're doing really great work for their community and but I don't know if the community is right behind them. Because I feel like with other communities in situations where their people they're getting into politics, you know, they bring their whole community with them. You know, their whole community is there and they're like, they know. If, you know, I don't know how many of us know how many Black people are in like, you know, in the provincial, like in the different parties, in the different political parties or whatever, like, right? Like, we don't really pay attention to that. So I think what I would love to see is, yes, these people who are doing the work, but if you can find a way to bring the community with us so that the community is there to support and the community actually knows what these people are doing, what their mandates are, what they're trying to, like, you know, achieve with the status that they've gotten. That's not something that I see being talked about or hearing in the community. So that's what I would like. I would love to see that change.
Okay, and maybe that's something.
It should be part of that change. I am very aware that I too should be a part of that change.
Listen, I have nominated you already. I'm waiting for you to accept the call. But I think this is it right here. You know, because for me, I think that another thing we do, and this was a wake up call for me, by the way. When I initially took on this call of like raising awareness on PTSD and talking about what I went through, I met my community and everybody was like, listen, man, no one else is here to do that. You've got to be the one to do it. And, you know, so my goal was always to raise awareness, to advocate, but not necessarily be the lead. But once I realized the void that existed, I took that lead. And so I think for our community, that's where we must take. It's a sacrifice. It is really a sacrifice because you could easily do so much. There is so much opportunities here. But as Africans, as a people who are coming from a background where we find that the space is void, we have to sacrifice our individual sometimes, not all the time. I really encourage people to first build themselves up. That's probably the difference between me and other people. I want you to first succeed as an individual. Because otherwise you can sacrifice and then end up alone and then you look around and it's like, okay, what happened? All of this work I'm doing for everybody, what happened to me? Yeah, so
it has a lot of people.
Yeah, it happens to people all the time, where we sacrifice for the greater good and everybody leaves us sort of hanging and we you know. So I want people to definitely focus on making sure they develop themselves. But at the end of the day, when you see a void, trust me, no one else is there to fill it. So for you, when that time comes, when that time comes, I want to see Celestine NEMA's name on. I don't even care what party you run for, to be honest. As long as the interests are for the East African community, I'm fine.
I mean, you know, we'll see where things take us. I never really think of myself as a very political person in in that sense, but I really care about our community, and I really want us to be able to inspire each other and to motivate each other to to achieve great things and to be great Canadians. That's something that's like, we tend to forget that we are Canadians, and we need to be able to take that name and stand like firmly and say it with our chest that we're Canadian, and have everybody else know that we are Canadians. Yes, we're African Canadians, but like stand and hold that strong. So I do hope that these changes are going to happen, and I hope more and more young people are going to be involved in politics, are going to be involved in all facets of Canadian living, because we are here to stay. We're not going anywhere.